Okay, thank you everyone for coming, and thank you, Kath, for joining us from sunny Scotland. Just quickly to introduce Kath and this workshop. This is one in a series of short taster workshops, really, and I won't go into great detail about all of the different workshops, but this one's really focusing on how do we ensure the well-being of staff and practitioners, really, because if you want staff to engage with learning and create a learning culture within a care home, how do we make sure the staff feel valued and appreciated and are able to be themselves? So that's basically what this workshop's about. So I'm going to hand over to Kath, who's are you going to screen share, Kath? And then would people mind if they switch off their microphones, mute their microphones while Kath's talking, and then when you go into breakout rooms, obviously we'll, if you can speak, you can unmute. So I want to be quick and hand over straight to Kath. Thank you ever so much, Kath.
Okay, so hi everybody. So I'm Kath MacDonald. I'm an honorary lecturer at Queen Margaret University in Edinburgh in nursing, and I also run a social enterprise called Listen Up Storytelling, which is aimed to support health professionals, those who care for others, to care for themselves. And I'm going to tell you, I'm just going to share my screen now. Oh, it says host disabled participant screen sharing. So I need to be able to, I can't at the moment, Nick, because I'm not the host. So you need to be able to turn that on for me so that I can share my screen. You're on mute, Nick. Nick, you're on mute.
The person who was overseeing the admin is not able to come today, so I don't know that I can do that. Let's have a look at Kath. I can share the slides, Kath.
Could you please, because I can't.
Yep. How's that?
That's it. That's it.
And you tell me when you want to go forward, Kath.
Okay, that's fine. So if you can move forward, please. That's it. So the idea today was to introduce ourselves and introduce you to something called Cake, which you can see in the screen there. So I'm going to talk about that more later on. The basis of this is storytelling. So we're going to think about how we can do that. I'm going to get us to try that out today. So that's kind of just a taster today, and I'll go into it more, but at the minute I want us to try a little introductory exercise. So if you can move us on, Nick, please.
Okay. So
I had asked in advance if you could bring some sort of artifact to be able to introduce yourself to somebody in the group. Well, I'm hoping we can put ourselves into groups of 5. Is that still?
Yeah, I can do that.
Well, just hang on one sec. So if you haven't got an artifact, don't worry. It can be something in the room. It can be something that you have that you can describe. But this is just a 1-minute exercise so that you can talk to that artifact as to introduce yourself. And don't just talk about profession, talk about who you are as a person. I know you've only got 1 minute, but this is just a taster of the kit that I want you to see. So I'm going to put you into groups now of 5, and if you could include us in those groups, Nick, please.
Yeah.
And we'll have 5 minutes, so time it tightly, and then we'll come back into the main group afterwards.
So we've got about 20 people. So if I create 5 groups of 4?
5 fours would be lovely. Yeah.
Great. Open all rooms.
So just a little introductory exercise. And I've got to join.
You all join, is that okay?
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. No, I'm just checking because we receive link for different group, and most of us is there, but I managed to join the new group, so I would just try to instruct others. All right.
Great. I am so sorry that we've
no problem. Ladies, I can, do you have, hello,
Hello?
I managed to, sorry, I'm talking to other groups. I managed to join, I managed to join new group meeting, and in chat somebody put link, so when you press it, it will show you, do you want to choose Zoom? So you say yes, and there you choose leave and join new meeting. So you press this and you should be in. No.
Okay. We're just having a little introduction where people are, I think Kath is...
It might be that because you left.
Yes. Oh yes, press this, honey. And
we all...
Yeah.
So you're not in a break, you're in the main room.
No, because we receive a wrong email with wrong link.
Oh, no, sorry, we're going to have to chase that for next week. I am so sorry. So we're just actually sharing something Kath was asking people in advance if they've got an object that can say something about themselves, and yeah, it's just something personal that can. I'm trying to think if I've got something here to grab. I've just been thrown by all the technology going wrong, really. But what have I got? Well, I've got a little thing I can share. It's a little painted stone, and it's basically, it was lovely. I visited a camp ages ago, and somebody made me this. And it's really precious to me. It was I was just shocked and taken aback by the kindness, really. It was some resident just painting, and then she just gave me this little polished stone, and I keep it because I just think it's a beautiful thing, really. So, and I suppose it says something about me, because I think little things mean a lot to people, and it's only a little thing. It's probably, you put it on eBay, it wouldn't sell any money, but it was the fact that it was a very personal gift from somebody to me that made it something precious, really. So I suppose that says something about me. I don't know if anybody else has got something that... I value the little things, and I think those are really important, and I think they are in care, really. The little kindnesses, the little thank yous to staff and all that sort of stuff. So I don't know if any... I'm going to close the room now and get the other people back. Is that okay? They've all got like 30 seconds, I think. We normally have an admin person, you see, an admin colleague who does all the technology, and she's...
Yes, the last week I couldn't join at all, so I kept good hours at work, so I joined Hadiza, but yes, it's like I was forgotten. So it's a problem each meeting with something.
That's
and I know
not good. No, we'll put our heads together after this. I am sorry, Nika.
Sorry, Nick, I think I've just left the meeting beforehand.
Oh, that's okay. That's fine. I did it say you did get a thing that says meeting ending in 90 seconds or 60 seconds?
Yeah, and I kind of clicked it to get rid of it. I left it.
And I did exactly the same.
Right. So people should be coming back now. I'm just looking.
Okay. Nick, can you unshare the screen for a minute?
Unshare.
Yeah, the PowerPoint for a minute.
How do I do that?
Oh, don't worry then.
Have you tried clicking on the link in the chat?
Okay. Oh dear. I'm so sorry about this, folks. Yeah.
We're getting an awful lot of background noise at the minute too. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, is everybody switched? Iga, could you turn your microphone? Would you mind? Sorry, just I wonder if it's, and Michelle's iPad is good. Oh, thank you, Michelle. Is that better, Kath?
Yeah, that's better. There's some messages there's some feedback.
I'm just wondering, have we had Nick in the meeting at the minute?
Can you hear the feedback? I don't know if that's coming from the other room or not, but there are. That's better now.
Cheryl, could you turn, anybody who's got a microphone on, can you just mute yourselves for Kath? just muted, so just that little bit of feedback.
I think that's a wee bit better. Thank you. And I'm seeing that Stacey can't join in the discussions because she's in the office. That's fine. Cheryl, I hope that's a little better now in terms of connections. I can certainly, I'm not getting any feedback. So what was the point in that exercise? Okay, I want to take just a couple of minutes, and because of the sound, perhaps we could just quickly use the chat box. What do you think the point in that exercise was? And we'll, just very quickly type a couple of things into the chat box. Okay, so we've got something visual, aids, memory, to see what was important to us as persons, absolutely. To have something to create a conversation. You can learn quite a bit about someone in a short space of time. Sharing something of yourself to a stranger, to get to know someone. And that's exactly why we did that. And the point of it is that by bringing something that's important to someone, whether that's a picture or a calendar or whatever else, it begins to break down barriers. So when you're working in a team, one of the things that you all know about each other is your roles, but actually there are lots of things, perhaps personally, that you don't know about each other because you don't get time to do that in work because you're so busy getting on with the job. And it's these kind of personal moments that help us to break down barriers and help us to create safe spaces to work in and to speak up in. And that's what this is kind of the introduction to this is about. So we're talking about being able to work together in a space that feels brave enough that we can speak up and say things that we might actually at times feel a bit intimidated about. And so these are some of the exercises that we can do to help to get to know each other as persons and then feel safe in teams to start addressing some of the issues, whether it's self-care issues, stress issues, staff issues, whatever. And I'm going to come back to that a bit more when I talk more about cake in a minute. So Nick, if you could reshare the presentation, please.
I changed you to host, Kath, and it won't let me share now because it says you're the host.
Okay. Okay, so we've just done the feedback. Okay, so I'm going to take, I've got a bit less time than I had, I think, so I'm going to take, oh, not too bad. I'm going to take a wee bit of time to tell you about Cake, okay, which is the tool that I'm introducing to you today. I'll just give you a little bit of background and context. So this was a project that we got some funding for to work with a group of district nurses, community nurses. And at the time, the topic was around secondary psychological trauma. And as you can imagine with COVID, there's been a lot of secondary psychological trauma. And what we did was we did a series of 5 workshops where we brought nurses in and we set up some of the conditions for sharing stories. We spent the first 2 workshops actually creating these brave spaces through creative activities, checking in, setting up how we worked together. And before we even got down to the stories. We used, as you see, everybody in the slide, everybody got a kit bag. which had Lego in it, which had drawing materials, very creative stuff, so that we were able to kind of get away from the atmosphere of the care home or the district nursing situation. We took it out, and once people started to get creative, they found it was fun, and it opened up lots of dialogue. So for example, by the time we got to sharing stories, some people made their story out of Lego and were able to talk to that. Other people created a fairy tale, once upon a time type story, to talk about their issue. And as you can imagine, some of these issues were quite heavy going in terms of what they'd been dealing with in homes and all the rest of it. But as I say, the important thing was to spend time at the beginning creating those conditions for what we call, setting up those brave spaces. Once we did that, we then shared stories. We had quite a lot of time for reflection on those stories to pick out what the key issues were, and then started to think about action plans. What could we do, either individually or collectively in our teams, to pick out, after picking out what the key issues in these stories were. For some, that was around self-care. What can we do to actually promote our own self-care? For others, it was about, well, actually, what can we do to challenge some of the structures that are in place that are making us feel this way? So it's not always about what you have to do for yourself, but how you together as a team work out how to sometimes challenge what's going on out there, which is really important, because you just can't, it's unrealistic to be taken more and more on and say, oh well, the quick fixes, we'll do a bit of mindfulness if nothing changes at the top. So there are structures in place where you have to kind of learn some of the tools to address that. So we have action plans and evaluations to figure that out. One of the other things we spent a lot of time on in this process was what we called ways of working. So we used to talk about ground rules. You maybe remember that in the old days. We don't talk about ground rules anymore. But what we talk about are shared ways of working according to our values. And those, again, are very introductory before you get on to storytelling. So what we do is we ask people in their teams, what's important to you about how you work together? So if somebody says something like trust, then we ask the question, well, what would that look like in a team? So you give an example perhaps in your team, and you maybe document that, and by the end you have a list of the things that are important and the ways you're going to work together. And then if somebody or a group of people behave differently, you've got something to go back to and say, well, what about our ways of working? I thought we were going to, take 5 minutes at the beginning of the day to ask each other how we were. Or I thought we had agreed that confidentiality was really important, but I'm not seeing that in the team at the moment, or I'm not hearing that everybody's voices are heard. And that takes courage and bravery to do that. So it's important that you have the structures in place first before you can do that. Okay, I'm going to move the slides on a little bit so that you can see. So this is cake. This is what came out of these 5 workshops. It's a co-designed resource that has 7 slices, and each slice has a series of cards within them so that you can pull them out and go through some of the exercises as a team. And the first 3 slices are the slices that I talked about that are about embedding practices, setting up trust, helping each other to come together as a team. Then you move on to the storytelling slice, which is followed by action and reflection. And then there's a self-care and an evaluation slice. And you can work through this bit by bit. You can take 20 minutes to do just a simple check-in exercise. How's everybody doing today? Or if you've got an hour, which I know is very rare in your work, you can maybe do, 5 or 6 of the slices. And we've been piloting this now for the last 3 months with 17 different teams, district nurses, care homes, student nurses, occupational therapists, to see how it's working and what the issues are. It requires a bit of facilitation, and we've been doing some drop-in sessions for facilitators to help actually bring this into their teams. And so far the feedback has been really good. And we're about to evaluate it over the next month or two. We have a couple of dates set up. So that's kind of cake in a nutshell. I wanted to show you one of the slices. So I'm going to, I don't know, I'll hold this up to the camera just so that you can see it. It all comes in what looks like a pizza box. Okay, with 7 slices inside the pizza box. Can you see that? Yep. And each slice looks like this. And within the slice, as I say, there are different cards with activities and overview and instructions for facilitators. So we've kind of used it as a bit of a recipe. There are methods, there are ingredients that you need before you try it out. So what I'm going to do now, bearing in mind we've not set up the brave spaces in the, but I just want to show you an example of one of the stories from the storytelling slides. I think what you can do in your teams, if you think this is something that you might work with, is what we suggest is that we start with exemplar stories so that you get people used to what it's like to tell stories in your team. So I'm going to give you an exemplar story in a minute, but once you get used to this and good at it, people will come with their own stories in the team. Now that could be a story about something good that happened to them at work, or it could be a story about a problem that they want to share and have a bit of discussion and reflection and maybe action planning around it. So at this point, are there any questions about cake?
I imagine, Kath, people might be interested whether it can be purchased or whether it will be accessible at some time for people to look at and feel and touch, really.
Right. So at the moment, as I say, we've only printed enough for the pilots because they cost about £20 each at the moment to buy. We are making this available, you know, free of charge to people, really. Although you might have to purchase it at £20 because that's what it costs to make it. But we're also in, we're working with some designers to try and put this online, not to use it as an online distance resource, but so that you can access the materials online and don't have to have a physical resource. And we plan to have that by next year. So part of the pilot is actually working with this to see what needs to be refined and what we can do. But yes, we absolutely hope that you'll be able to have this and work with it. And we work alongside other, we use other sort of creative tools. So one that I'm going to share with you are these are called evoke cards. And we'll do a little exercise at the end where you can use evoke cards to help to tell your stories or to help share your feelings or to help you check in, check out, evaluate. There are tons of different uses for these. And again, I don't make these and they're about £17 a packet, but they're a great resource for teams. And they're you know, part of the say some of the resources.
£17, Kath, you said, about 17, yeah.
17. So these are something that you can use, are quick and dirty and you can use easily. So that's just another resource. So what I'm going to do now, if I've got no questions, is I'm just going to tell you a story. And then I've got some questions. I want you to take 1 minute after I've finished telling the story. So listen actively. It's a very short story. Take 1 minute after and jot down kind of what you what the key issues in that story are for you. So the questions are things like, what do you think this story is about? What resonates with you and how are you feeling? Okay, and we'll come back to that in the group after you've had a bit of a minute or two to do that and have a quick discussion. Is that okay? Yeah. So, as I say, this is a very short story. Once upon a time, there was a boy who was employed by a rich, nasty woman. His job was to fill up her water pots every day at the well at the bottom of the house and to carry them back up the hill to her house, one on each shoulder. Now, one of the pots was leaking, and each day he would arrive at the house with one full pot and one empty pot. And the nasty woman would scold him and reprimand him for being careless. Despite the fact he told her that the pot was leaking, no action was taken. Weeks and months went by, and the same thing kept happening until one day his employment was terminated. He left in tears. He was worried about the money. How was he going to support his poor family? And, you know, what was he going to do now? Now, the rich woman rarely left the house, so she couldn't see what was at the bottom of the drive and what was at the top of the drive. But one day, she had to go out for an emergency. And as she walked down the road, she noticed that one side of her driveway was awash with colourful, vibrant plants, while the other was dried and shriveled and nothing grew. And that's the end of the story. So I want you to take a minute, jot down a few thoughts, and I'm going to share the screen again with you because there's some questions on that, and we'll come to them in about a minute. Okay, so you can either use the chat box or maybe put your hand up, use your screen for reactions to try and answer some of those questions. So what do you think this story is about? Okay, the lack of trust wasn't listened to, the boy was disheartened. The water was leaking from the bucket, had watered the lovely flowers at the side of the drive. Okay. Any other thoughts? Or the story is about the importance of looking at the bigger picture. Thank you, John. A person is not listening, a person is stuck in their ways. Positive outcome from negative action. Thank you, Carol. Communication issues, Angela. No process to have your voice heard. What we perceive as a deficit can actually be an asset. Lack of action equals lack of change. These are great. So how did you feel when you were sort of at the end of hearing that story? Felt sorry for the boy. Frustration for the boy. Thank you. The water leaked, it fed the flowers. Every cloud has a silver lining. Okay, can anybody relate that to what's happening at work? The women may have been forced to reevaluate. Can anybody, does any of that resonate with the workplace? Concerned that the women needed support. What do you think? We've talked about voices not being heard, frustrations, change, lack of action, communication issues. Yes, it resonates. You can't pour water out of an empty vessel. Okay, get the metaphor there. Happens with poor leadership skills. Listen to other people, to what they have to say. So different departments have what's important to them. Leaders are not listening to employees. So I suppose my point is, can you see from that simple story how you could use something like that in your workplace to start in a safe way to unearth some of the issues that might be important at work? Does anybody think that they could do that? That they could use that? It's a coaching method, yep. This approach is a coaching method. Thank you, Terry. It's just one way of perhaps sometimes making it feel safe. It would be very interesting to do it. Well, as I say, we're doing it at the moment and we're getting some really interesting results from that. And some people, over the 3-month period that we've been doing this, are only just getting to the stories. They've spent a lot of time using the other slices, such as the check-in slice, the self-care slice, the setting up ways of working. There's a slice around defining shared vision, shared values, so that you do that kind of legwork first and then move into the stories. Sometimes we feel the other way around and staff do not listen to constructive criticism or guidance. So again, that then comes back to setting up your ways of working so that, you know, everybody's voice is heard and we actively listen. And as facilitators, you can then raise that and say, well, I thought we had agreed this. I'm not sensing that everybody's, you know, being listened to here or being heard. And there are then, you know, through the storytelling, you can move on to think about, right, what are the priorities here for us as a team? People are not being heard, what can we do about that? Or management are not listening to us, what can we as a team do about that? Or we thought we were working in such a way, but that doesn't seem to be happening, what can we do about that? And the way to do that is not to blame and name, but to do it in an adult way, using, as I say, your ways of working as a kind of reference point. But the stories are just a tool to try and open up the conversation. Yeah, somebody said an object or a flashcard or postcard can start a conversation. Well, that's exactly what the evoke cards do. So you can do something as simple as say to your team, pick a picture and put them on the floor, pick a picture and tell me how you're feeling today. And you might get this, something like that, which says, no turning at this point. And it's like, well, we started the process, we need to keep going with it. Or I feel guilty because I haven't done it. Or so it's a very simple prompt. Okay, again, I'm just kind of aware of time. I want you to watch something now. So as I say, we had 5 workshops. As a result of that, we co-designed this resource called Cake, which we're now testing. But we also made a video, which I'm going to share with you to give you a flavour of how people were feeling and what was coming out of that. And I think it's important to say that some of the stories that came out of that particular project, some of them were poetry, some of them were stories, and I'm about to go on Friday night to a launch of something called Pandemic Portobello, which is a little area in Edinburgh where some of those stories have been taken and published now in a book and are about to be launched on Friday night at an event. And you know, it's a great achievement for the nurses that were in the group to see their work. But I also want to show you the video. So fingers crossed, I'm going to share with you again. It's just about 3 minutes. And then we're going to come back and do some, another wee bit.